Hello students, let's resume the class. And I'm sorry, got the viral, for 2 days I could not come. I know this is the time of men's. You might be busy, but do not worry, I'm there. In between, if you need anything, I have time and again in every video I am saying, you just drop the message to the office so that I can reach you, we can talk to you. We talked about the two thinkers, Marx and Emile Durkheim. Now today, in this series, we'll be talking about two more. That is Max Weber and Talcott Parsons. Time and again I have been saying that the thinkers which we usually take are weak or so while teaching. In advanced course that has to be done, so the final points are to be talked by us. Though I have been giving you the entire conceptual clarity in a brief so that you would be able to recall back, you would be able to add something and make your answer look more lucrative and mark fetching. Let's begin with the Max Weber. And I told you that when you're looking at the Max Weber or any thinker for that matter, look at the socio-historical background, look at the historical intellectual background within which the thinker's view and his direction of thinking, social thinking, could be understood by you. When we're looking at Weber, the another German scholar, similar to that of Marx, we'll find about the certain similarities in terms of he being an economist, the political analyst, the sociologist, historians. And that way, understanding of the Weberian sociology has to be talked about. But I'll not forget to tell you that when you're talking about Durkheim, in terms of his methodology, in contrast to that one, you also need to talk about the methodological concerns in a Weberian sociology as well. When you started talking about the positivism, non-positivism, that debate you need to, same methodological debate between Durkheim and Weber comes out. Almost every micro-sociological perspectives which you are looking at, somehow or other they would be influenced by the Weberian perspective. And thus, like Durkheim, Weber occupies a very central place in the sociological tradition and its evolution. The concepts, the new kind of theoretical methodological concerns in sociology, the different dimensions on the social facets of society, right from social action to the power, authority, legitimacy, bureaucracy, religion, stratification. Weber occupies a unique place in the sociological tradition. He is a treasure to us. But in a methodological perspective, if you remember one word I said, that if Durkheim's methodology was for the sociology, then Weberian methodology is basically for the practitioners of sociology. The similar kind of things which I usually do to make the students know and to look at the questions in a more focused manner, and to also make a synopsis in terms of how the things are to be talked about. So here we'll talk about Max Weber. when you're looking at the Weberian perspective in terms of the historical and intellectual background, the first thing that you need to understand, that is the beginning of a new theoretical, methodological concern or approach in sociological tradition that is interpretive movement. Now when you look at this one, then this very interpretive movement which we are talking about, then you also need to, in a sequence, need to know about the background of German historicism. This background of German historicism is basically between the rising positivist historians that is concerned with the methodological issues or methodological dimension in a natural and a social science. It's a concern of methodological concern in natural versus social science. Wilhelm Dilthey, Wilhelm Windelband, Henrik Rickert, and within which Weber being a part and parcel of this debate, being witness to this debate, how he takes the historic and ideographic approach in sociological tradition, and thus he would initiate a non-positivist style. I am writing here number C, non-positivistic style. And once you talked about the non-positivist style, then some other methodological concerns which are important in Weber, that is, relation of science to value. With this, Weber will be talking about the concept of value relevance. He will also be having his opinion on the value-free sociology which was raised by the positivist, and the objective analysis of society within this very perspective. Relation of science to value, that has to be talked about. But when he talks about relation of science to value, Weber also talks about the concept of value neutrality. You remember that word, that line which I said, that if sociology is a value relevant, it needs to be value neutral, because science is all about facts, not of values. And once this talk about the most important methodological dimension that we will always have to remember, we will have to always use in the questions of Weber, is the first end, which you talk about first end as a method. It is an intrinsic method in a social science, and precisely in a Weberian sociology. Though first end would also be talked about Wilhelm Dilthey, which I'll just be talking about. I'll be giving the reference. And one of the most important methodological concern in a Weber has been ideal type method. You need to look at ideal type in terms of this. That the problem of relation of science to value and the problem of value neutrality, within which you need to place the ideal type. And then the certain features which you might be aware of. Once you have done this one, then the themes will be coming in your syllabus. That is, sociology of social action. A very passing reference of Wilfredo Pareto has to be talked about here. You might have known him in terms of economist and sociologist and circulation of elites. But here a very passing reference in terms of the social action. And then concept of legitimacy, within which you will be placing the concept of power and authority, within which you will also be talking about bureaucracy. And then sociology of realism. And from there you talk about the criticism and evaluation. But this is the most important dimension from where the questions, not only on the Weber, but the questions in a second unit, from where you talk about the sociology of the science, some questions are coming from there. Even in the first unit you find about the interpretive movements, and that way Weber has to basically view that. Let's begin this one once again. That Weber occupies a very unique place in the sociological tradition. And when I say it occupies a very unique place in sociological tradition, his analysis of the society, social phenomena, the different facets of society, not only separates him different from his contemporaries, but also bringing certain kind of novelty in a sociological tradition, which his predecessors has initiated in terms of Kant, Spencer, Durkheim and others. And thus I always say that when we are talking about the modern sociology, apart from Durkheim, particularly in terms of establishing sociology, one of the major contributions will be coming from Max Weber as well. And very opposite to the positivism, he initiates the interpretive movement in sociology. Interpretive understanding of the social action. And thus when you are looking at what interpretivism has brought, it basically says that there is no objective reality. The objective reality is basically determined by the personal perspective of humans, by the cultural norms which they are part of. Interpretive movement or interpretive understanding, sociology, would also become critical of the scientific sociology as the positivists have initiated. And in this very perspective, the moment you talk about the social action theory within which interpretism will emerge out, Max Weber would be one of the major contributors to the interpretative movement in sociology. The interpretive movement is basically bringing the method that is called Verstehen, to understand, or understanding in German. It means understanding the meaning attributed by the actor behind his action. Actions are not mechanical. There is an intention behind the action. That intention, that meaning has to be interpreted by the sociologist, for which the sociologists need to have the empathetic understanding of the motives and also the background of the people whom they study. It means in a very broader perspective we are talking about interpretism. Interpretivism is basically a philosophical position, philosophical doctrine which would analyze society based on the specific value system, a specific value system of the society and culture in which they occur in. The lives, experiences of the individuals seems to be the most important one. The individual's experience of the objective reality. And individuals may experience the objective reality differently, and thus they may act accordingly. The individuals who would be experiencing the objective reality differently, they will basically be acting consciously in that perspective. So the empathetic understanding seems to be the more important one, for which the Western as a method would become the important one. And the moment Weber is taking this Western, the interpretative understanding of social action, then the non-positivist stand in sociology that will be coming up, that we have talked about that. But when we make a sweeping understanding that to Weber, sociology is the interpretative understanding of social action to arrive at a causal and the direction, then let me say that it is not the only legitimate area Weber says in terms of sociological inquiry. But the kind of sociology what Weber wanted to develop, that will make him come in opposition to the predecessors. And in this very perspective, the impact of German historicism would become the most important one. Weber does not agree the sui generis reality of the society. It means sociology is not concerned with the study of abstract society. Rather, the unit of analysis in sociology should be the real flesh and blood social individuals. And if the real flesh and blood social individuals are the unit of a study, then abstract theorizing has to be discarded. For which you need to move away from the nomenclatic one. You need to move toward the ideographic, empirical and historical kind of research. Weber is also not agreeing with the Marx that particular history of Western civilization can be studied. If you want to study the history, the non-existence laws containing the fate of mankind, what Marx has talked about in terms of socialism and others, Weber is not looking on that very perspective. And if Weber moves away from the sui generis reality of society, then you know whom we are referring to. When I quote Weber, Weber says society is a network of social relationship created by the social individual who believe themselves to be meaningfully oriented. And thus, sociology is a science which attempts to interpret social action to arrive at causal connection, its course and its direction. And if it is attempts to interpret social action, then the subjective meaning which has been attributed by the actor behind his action is the prime concern in a Weberian sociology. Sociological methods should basically try to make a balance between the subjective meaning attributed by the actor and the causal connectivity without which science of society would not become possible, Weber argues. Now look at the balance, subjective meaning attributed by the actor and the causal connectivity, cause and effect relations, without which science of society would not become possible. And once you talk about that subjective meaning attributed by the actor behind his action is the prime concern, then you are also entering to the debate concerning the methodological issues in natural versus social sciences. I had quoted, I want you to recall back 2 lines of me, that sociology to become science does not need to be positivistic in orientation. And Weber further says, even if sociology is not positivistic, objectivity does not prelude us. Now in this very perspective, the impact of German historicism, that debate between the rising positivist historians concerning the methodological issues in natural and social science seems to be the significant one. For example, when we are looking at the German historicism, Wilhelm Dilthey, he argues that cultural science studies acting individuals. When we are talking about the social science, we are talking about the cultural science. The concern of the cultural scientists is acting individuals with ideas and intentions. And if acting individuals with ideas and intentions, thereby requiring a special method of inquiry that is called Fasten or Wasten we are talking about, to understand the German word. Whereas natural science studies soulless thing. It does not need to know the subject which it studies. Look at that how this Western method is coming out. And George Simmel will also be significant in terms of establishing Western as an intrinsic part in sociology. I'll be talking about this one, the meanings. And when Wilhelm Windelband comes out, he basically initiates the difference between the natural science concern and the social science concern. He says that natural sciences strive for universal laws, that is nomothetic, whereas cultural science are individualizing in nature. And that way the debate between nomothetic and ideographic that could be talked, which we have talked on earlier. Rickert comes out. And when Henrik Rickert comes out, he says it is the matter that distinguishes the natural and the social sciences. Though the methods of natural science could be applied in a social science, it means social phenomena can be studied by the methods of natural science, for sure. But in that case, the investigator or social scientist would arrive only at a specific nature of that phenomena, not the entirety. Weber is a witness to this debate. And when Weber is a witness to this debate, then in terms of the new idealist perspective, Weber would basically be talking about taking a stand in terms of historic and ideographic stand. Weber wants sociology to be systematic. But sociology to be systematic does not need the methods of natural science. The methods of natural science are not appropriate. Sociology, to Weber is a science on the basis of its own merit. Same. If sociology is a science on the basis of its own merit, it does not need to be positivistic, and even if it is not positivistic, objectivity would not prelude it. And in comparison to the natural science, sociologists are more opportunistic, sociologists are more fortunate. They are in advantage condition. And that advantage lies in the fact that is an ability to understand social phenomena they study. And the ability to understand the social phenomena, Weber is now bringing the Verstehen as a method to understand and establishing it as an interesting part of the methods in a social science. In a natural science, search of law is an end in itself. I repeat, in a natural science, search of law is an end in itself. But this is not the case in sociology. Rather, the aim of sociologists or sociological law is to understand social behavior clearly in an attempt to explain it causally. Attempt to understand, analyze causally, which could be checked by others. Here, Weber would initiate interpretive movement, once again I am saying. To understand, to analyze individual, actor and his action. And therefore Weber is saying that sociologists are required to engage themselves in the process of meaning, because the action to which actors attribute subjective meaning is the subject matter of sociology. I talked about the interpretivism. Now a new novelty is emerging out in the methodological concerns in sociology, just opposite of that one, the opposite of positivist orientation. Now once we have talked about, I just said that Weber recognizes that sociology is not merely limited, confined or confined to the study of social action, but the kind of sociology what Weber wants to develop may be decisive for the status of sociology as a science. And therefore, opposite to his predecessors, who have tried to establish or analyze social phenomena on the basis of the methods of natural science, Weber moves away from there. This question has been there very early. That why Weber considers that the predecessors who have tried to analyze social phenomena on the basis of the methods of natural science have committed blunder. Such would be the wordings, if I am not exactly remembering the word. Sociology cannot provide the universal law of human evolution, cannot provide the universal explanation of the action, and neither sociology could provide the nomothetic kind of perspective. The meaning may vary from culture to culture. Meaning attributed by the actor may vary in the different cultures of the same society. And the meanings could also vary here at the true time span of an individual's life. That the kind of universal law akin to that of the natural law, which the sociology, the predecessors are trying to establish, is not possible. Sociology is basically a subjective understanding of the objective reality. And thus, in terms of the beginning of interpretive movement, in which the impact of German historicism seems to be important. Weber is now bringing or making Fasten as an intrinsic part of sociological method. Though he says when you're talking about science, mind my line here. In general, when you talk about science, science has two features: abstraction and incompleteness. Remember this one, because I will be using that one, or you will be using that line in terms of ideal type. Then when you talk about the features of science, abstraction and incompleteness. At the level of abstraction, both the sciences are similar. Either we are talking about the natural science or we are talking about the social science. And thus here we are concerned of relation of science to value. And I quote Weber that social and historical phenomena consist of many actions and interest. Thus, whenever the investigator tries to study any social or historical phenomena, he is confronted with chaos of facts. Thus, investigator studies certain point of reference, or from a certain point of reference. The moment you say he studies from a certain point of reference, the concern of value relevance comes into picture. Now look at your questions of value relevance. That when a social and historical phenomena consists of many fold actions and interests, there is a chaos of facts. So whenever the investigator will be approaching that one, the social historical phenomena, he will be doing it from the certain point of reference. And doing it from a certain point of reference is nothing but the concept of value relevance. The statement of the problem and the selection of the facts are consciously or unconsciously related to cultural values. If they are consciously, unconsciously related to the cultural values, then the investigator would basically study what he considered important to study. And thus, an investigator, mind the line, that thus the investigator can never be objective, scientific, and there cannot be any objective, scientific analysis of cultural life. Why? Because the investigator would always ascribe the cultural significance to the phenomena he studies. This is the value relevance. But apart from the relation of science to value, where the value relevance we have talked about, it means the objective understanding, scientific understanding of the society, that is now debated. The subjective meaning attributed to the actor, that has been talked about. And also the investigator will try to investigate from the cultural significance. Then the value-free sociology, which we are initiating, or which have been initiated, is now debated in a Weberian sociology. Though it is also true that though Weber talks about value relevance and says that sociology is value relevant, it needs to be value neutral. Why? Because science is all about facts, not of values. Now look at the objectivity of Weber. The kind of objective reality what the Durkheim's methodology or positivists have talked about. Weber is now, though talking about this objectivity, but his analysis of that objectivity is completely different from that of the positivist orientation. There is a difference between normative knowledge, that is what ought to be, and existential knowledge, that is what it is. Sociologists should not make any moral judgment, should not derive any ethical imperative from the study of cultural value. Sociologists should not judge any phenomena to be good or bad, because Because the moment he is doing it in terms of judging it in terms of good or bad, the moral judgment is coming out. Each person, each sociologist, each investigator, each actor has his own value. And choice of value is subjective. Mind the lie. Choice of value is subjective. It means science should not focus or could not focus on value. Rather, it should limit, science should limit itself to the effects of various actions, values, but not on what action or value should be chosen. The effects are important, not what it should be studied. Sociologists are not in a condition to pronounce on any value, neither to assert his own value at the expense of others. He needs to be value neutral. It means now, when Weber is now looking at, in terms of relation of science to value and the value neutrality, but the actions of the individual seems to be important, subjective meaning attributed by this is to be important. Then Weber is basically taking an historical and ideographic stand in sociological tradition. How people explain their actions with the cultural meaning, which though may vary from society to society, may also vary from time to time. Thus, what is required to know is the empirical reality, that subjective meaning of the objective reality. And thus, Weber will de-emphasize the previous methodological concerns in sociology. And he will become critical of both, not only the positivists but also the historians. He is also critical of those historians who have tried to delimit the explanation of historical phenomena on the basis of single law. You are becoming deterministic. There is no determinism in Weber here. Every sort of determinism, previously what has been talked about, Weber is now freeing sociology from this deterministic one. Thus he says those historians who are trying to explain the historical phenomena on the basis of single law, no, it is not possible. The matter of science, be it of a natural, social science, historical science, it is basically related with abstraction. And if it is related with abstraction, then on the basis of this abstraction, you will be selecting something and then you will be explaining that one. Either you are studying the matter or you are studying the man or any social phenomena, it involves abstraction. And this abstraction cannot be understood on the basis of a single law, what the historians have tried to do. Similarly, when you are looking at the positivists, who have somewhere defocused, who have somewhere neglected, discarded the motives, intentions of the individuals. No. In the study of the social phenomena, the motives, intentions of the individuals are also important. Actor, most of the time, mostly does not act in a mechanical manner. He is not a machine. And therefore, you need to interpret what sociologists are required to do. Sociologists are now required to interpret the meaning, or that subjective meaning, what the actors have attributed behind their action. It means sociology, I have just said, sociology cannot provide the universal law of human behavior, similar to that of the natural science. Sociology can never confirm the evolutionary process of human society. Sociology can also not provide the justification, moral justification for any phenomena or for any existing state of affairs. And neither society could be viewed as a sui generis reality. These are the mistakes what Weber thinks the predecessors have done. And thus, he says those who have tried to explain social phenomena on the basis of the methods of natural science have committed a blunder. Everything is gone there. It was the same perspective whether we talk about Kant, Spencer, Marx, or even we talk about Durkheim. These were the certain methodological issues which we found the prime concerns in their thought. Now Weber says it's not possible. No universal law, no evolutionary process, no moral judgment, sui generis reality. Now what is left? Back to square one day. I always say Weber has brought sociology to the initial stage. If it cannot be done, we need de-emphasizing the predecessor methodology. Then Weber says sociology is concerned with the real blood and flesh and blood social individuals. And once you focus on the real flesh and blood social individuals, it requires historical, ideographic approach in which sociology is concerned with the subjective meaning attributed by the actor. And here, Fusten as a method would emerge out. Now we have come to the Fusten. It is a key term in a Weberian theoretical methodological sociology. To understand, or in German, sometimes you write understanding. But here I said, when you talked about the Wilhelm Dilthey, in terms of the Western, Weber is also recognizing the contribution of George Simmel, the formalistic school which you have talked about. He says, the Simmel has made it, and he recognizes the contribution of Simmel in making Fusten as an integral part in a sociological analysis. When you say subjective meaning attributed to the actor, now the meaning does not come or emerge from the configuration of objects external to human beings. When you say the meaning attributed to the actor. Now is this meaning is external to the human subject? And meaning is also not coming from the autonomous individual. Mind my line here. Rather, meaning is constituted in a social interactional process. I repeat, neither the meaning is external to the human subject, configuration of objects external to the human subject, nor from the perspective of the autonomous individual. So how does the meaning come? The meaning is basically emerging from the social interactional process. It is constituted of that social interactional process, for which understanding of that meaning, attribute of the actor, is most significant. Sociologists must engage themselves in knowing that meaning, that intention, that motive, for which Boston as a method will be coming out. And not only this, you also need to interpret the causes, that how the actor attributes meaning to his action. Since once again saying that actor is not acting in a mechanical manner, rather the actor works according to the motives, the intentions. And therefore, empathetic understanding behind these actions, motives, is required in part of the sociologists. It means the desired elasticity with the sociological methodology required, sociological method required. What he did not get in the hands of Durkheim's methodology, Weber is providing that elasticity to the sociological methods. Bringing a new kind of, bringing some sort of novelty, newness in the methodological concerns in sociology. Broadly, first hand could be divided into two parts. Direct observation first hand. It means some of the things which you know about, because we the sociologists have also been going through the similar kind of actions. But in a Weber, the second type is the most significant one. Second type is the most prime one. That is called explanatory first hand. It means first hand is direct observational and explanatory first hand. Through the explanatory first hand, you would be able to know the cause. You will be able to know that why the actor has attributed the meaning behind it. That explanation has to be sought, has to be taken from the actor's perspective. And once this has been done first hand as a method, now Weber is now from here in methodological concerns, methodological issues, is moving towards a different path, a new path. And he argues that in general sociologists must be able to obtain highly complex actions involving the articulation of many discrete actions. Sociologists must be able to obtain highly complex actions involving the articulation of many discrete actions. It means sociologists must be able to typify the meaningful actions in terms of hypothetical cultural values, guiding and constituting large-scale interactional process. I repeat the line. Sociologists must typify meaningful actions in terms of hypothetical cultural values, guiding and constituting large-scale interactional process. For example, if you have to talk about university, and what are the important actions taking place in university, my understanding of that actions, what I consider to be important, may be different from you. Your understanding of the important actions taking place in university may be different from your friends. And thus, this our understanding, this what we consider to be important, is an abstract typification or ideal type, through which we will be trying to approximate the reality. I am saying the word approximate the reality. It is founded on a one-sided accentuation of one or more points of view and synthesizing diffuse, discrete, more or less present, seldomly absent, concrete phenomena which are arranged according to one-sided emphasized views into an unified construct. So whenever a sociologist will pick up any phenomena, consciously, unconsciously, he will be approaching it from the one-sided accentuation. He will synthesize the discrete, the abstract, diffused, sometimes present, seldomly absent, into an abstract theorizing. This is an ideal type. And this one-sided accentuation of facts, typification, is necessary to approximate social or historical reality. Ideal type is necessary to address the problem of relation of science to value and value neutrality in sociology, in methodological purposes. Ideal type is also a refutal of the scientist's claim that it is able to reproduce entire reality. It is also a refutal of the scientist's claim that any conceptual apparatus can do justice to the infinite plurality of the phenomena. It means once you are talking about the ideal type, it is basically to address the problem of science to value, problem of value neutrality, limitation of science. That ideal type is also based on the principle that no scientific system is ever capable of reproducing entire reality. And also, no conceptual operators can ever do entire justice to the infinite plurality of the phenomena, since it involves abstraction on which the selection has to be done. The sociologist investigator will be doing it from the one-sided accentuation. So out of the abstraction, he will select. The dilemma emerging from this abstraction and selection, to overcome this dilemma, mind the line better, to overcome this dilemma between abstraction and selection, Weber is now proposing ideal type method to approximate the reality. And now you come to your line. Thus it is elastic, it is a mental construct, a cognitive map to approximate the reality. It may not be found empirically, seldomly absent, which you talked about. So there could be a possibility that what you have made may not be found empirically. And when you say ideal type, let me make two lines. That when you say that it should not be viewed terminologically in terms of the literal sense, it has nothing to do with the term ideal. It has to be viewed figuratively, not terminologically. Ideal, when you say the ideal, then you are having certain kind of perspective. No, it has to be looked figuratively. Ideal type could be of a brothel, ideal type could be of a chapel. Nothing to do with this ideal, moralistic or the certain desired kind of perspective. Terminological perspective. Ideal type is not the description, it's a description of everything. Rather, it is a description of only important aspects of an action in a pure form. It could also be a limitation of ideal type. It's not the study of entirety, rather it's a study of part of the entirety. This is the limitation of ideal type as well. But this is also a feature of ideal type. It is a rational blueprint to understand the patterns of social action. It also provides the base to the meaning what the actor has attributed. In terms of the value relevance, when the investigator has picked up any cultural phenomena to study, then he has basically talked about the value commitment. Ideal type will help displace that value commitment. That's why I said the ideal type is basically to address the problem of relation of science to value and value neutrality. Ideal type is not an end in itself, it is a means to analyze any concrete historical or cultural phenomena. Since it is a one-sided accentuation done by the investigator, so there could be possibility that the same phenomena may be approached through one-sided accentuation differently by the different scholars. And when any social phenomena has been approached by the different scholars, then you have too many works on the basis of which comparison could be done. That's why I said at university that my understanding would be different from yours. Your understanding might be different from your friend. It means if you are talking about university, then it is abstract. We have picked up some phenomena. We have had a one-sided accentuation. So the same phenomena may be studied by the different scholars, may lead to the different pure type, different ideal type, different typification, on the basis of which comparison could be done. And if we are able to compare, generalization will become possible. Can I now here say that Weberian ideal type is an alternative to Marxian dialectics, which was used for generalization, and Durkheim's comparative method? So it's an alternative to comparative method of Durkheim and dialectical method of Marx. Let me not forget to say, time and again I am saying that when you are talking about any question of Weber, if it is not related to the methodology, then of almost every themes, either from the social action to legitimacy, power, authority, bureaucracy, sociology of religion, that is a Protestant ethics institute of capitalism, the same first and ideal type has to be brought in your answers. Make it a point that you have brought these two methods in a Weberian sociology as an intrinsic part in a Weberian sociology. Weberian sociology is basically a science of social action. And when I say intrinsically a science of social action, then it emerges as a part and response to the debate that is German historicism. All those who participated into this debate, the methodological concern in natural and social science, they are focused on the different methods in a social science, and in which now we know that Weber has taken historical and ideographic perspective. And with this he has also become critic to positivism and also initiates interpretative movement in sociology. Weber has taken a middle path. I quote, if Kant believed that method of natural science be applied to the analysis of social phenomena, then George Simmel emphasized that social science require different methods. And by taking this debate which is going on, Weber is now taking a middle path. And within this he is initiating the interpretive understanding of social action, thereby initiating non-positivist stand in sociology. And even if, once again I am saying, even if it is not positivistic, it is not so that objectivity would not become possible in sociology. The kind of sociology which we are concerned with, the social science which we are concerned with, is an empirical science of concrete reality. And our aim as a sociologist is to understand this uniqueness of the subjective reality. Thus, the reflective nature of humans, which also attribute the relationship between actors' actions and cultural significance, requires different methodology. That is the first hand. Now look at, action is social insofar as it takes note of the subjective meaning attributed by the actor. When you say about social action, so action is social when it attaches, it takes notes of the social meaning what the actor has attached in his action. It means the subjective meaning is important. And social action is social as far as the subjective meaning of the actor takes account of the behavior of others, thereby oriented in its course. Now when they ask a social action, these are the two. That meaning is not coming from the configuration of the things external to the human subject, neither the meaning is coming from the autonomous individual. And action is social as far as it takes notes of the subjective meaning. And it is so, action is social as so far as this subjective meaning is influenced by the behavior of others. That's why the actor has oriented his action towards it. Social actions may include failure to act as well as passive acquiescence and could also involve past, present and future. When you say oriented towards others, here others could be infinite plurality unknown to the actor and could also be known to the actor. But all along this one, what sociologists are concerned is, or sociologists are concerned with, that sociologists are concerned with the meaningful action. And here, You need to, and a passing reference of Wilfredo Pareto, he distinguished between logical and non-logical action. This logical, non-logical action has a glimpse in a Weberian perspective. But rather than looking at the types of action from the observer's perspective, what Pareto has done, Weber looks the action from the actor's perspective. It means whenever you talk rationality, remember this word, rationality in Weberian sociology stems from individual. The actor. Taus, these are the four types, T, A, W, Z. So Weber in terms of the pure types is talking about the four types of action. Traditional action, affectional action, what rational or value oriented action, and joke rational action. But let me say here that when such kind of question comes on an action, you should not only try to make what traditional, affectional, what rational, value oriented, or joke rational actions are. Joke rational is a goal oriented action. In a Weberian further concept, we will be finding about only two, what rational and joke rational action. The eternal study, this is the way the things have been done, would be there in a traditional action. But you also try to compare the traditional, affectional, what rational, and joke rational action. When you are talking about the traditional actions, then most of the everyday actions are of this type. I am not going so deep into it. When a passenger goes to the air hostess and she has provided a very stern look. When a player has lost his emotional control, thrown his bat, it's a type of affectional action. It is antithetical to rationality. And why? Because the actor in affectional one is not able to make a calm and dispassionate relationship between the ends of the action and the means. It is neither defined by any tradition, nor by any value, nor by any goal. A captain of the sinking ship prefers to die rather than abandoning it. Is an example of what rational action? Value oriented action. And this is rational. This what rational which we are talking about, the value rational, it is rational in the sense that the actor consciously knows that abandoning would mean loss of honor or prestige. Thus the value attached to the honor and not the consequence becomes important. Value rationality is judged in terms of the subjectivity. Then it is difficult to compare one with another. Most of the religious, mind the line better, most of the religious or ethical actions belong to this type. Can I relate what rational action with the Protestant ethics? That ideal type? You as a student is strategizing a plan, a strategy to clear UPSC. A army general planning a strategy to win a war. A stockist is speculating something to earn more money in a stock market. These all are the joke rational one. Means to an end. End in itself is what rational. Means to end, it is precisely the consequence which is important in joke rational or goal-oriented action. So it means the two rational actions are what rational? Joke rational. Non-rational actions are traditional and affectional. Compare them. But all along do not forget to write that they are basically pure type. And that way through this you would be able to compare and generalize. Once you have done that one, then talk about the social action, talk about the Western method, talk about the passing reference of German historicism, talk about the Weber's stand, ideographic and historical, the interpretative understanding. and then talk about the types in terms of traditional, affectional, what rational, joac rational, and compare them. We know the meaning about this tradition, affection, what rational and joac rational because the actor has provided the meaning. Now once we have provided the meaning, first 10 is done. Now we have to go for the typification of that one in which the ideal type will emerge out. So we bring about this first 10, the meaning part, and then talk about the typification in terms of the pure type, that is an ideal type. And once we have done it, the Weber and another concept, every concept, once again I am saying, first 10, explanatory first 10, and ideal type would be the prime concern. And then the legitimacy that has to be talked about. We'll be talking about this one, just give me 2 minutes and I'll begin that one. The questions are coming in power and authority. Easy one to understand. Questions on bureaucracy is coming out. I'll give you the certain structural points on the Weberian bureaucracy. I'll speak it. And a Weberian analysis of legitimacy, like every other theme what in Weber we find about. The first and an ideal type seems to be the important method. And in this very analysis of legitimacy, you will be finding about the concepts of power and authority. Weber considered social relationship to be conflicting relationship. And power to be the very determinant of the social life. Relation to be conflicting and power to be the very determinant of the social life. But when you say power to be very determinant of social life, it is a complicated issue. Since power cannot be equated only with economic determinism or economic determination, nor it is merely derived from the control of the government or the political instrument. It means analysis of power requires multidimensional perspective. Which now Weber is basically trying to approach it through the ideal type, the pure type. Power is basically a possibility or chance of an actor within the social relationship who will be in a position to carry out his or her will despite the resistance of others. Coercion will come out. It means power is a probability or chance of an actor or actors. Mind my word, an actor or actors, plurality of actors. When I say actor, you will be talking about the personal power, which we will be using in terms of traditional and charismatic authority. Or actors, then we are talking about impersonal power. We will be talking about in a legal rational authority. Weberian concept of power is a zero sum, constant sum. The amount does not vary. The persons may vary. And it is rooted in a social relationship. So Weberian concept of power is rooted in a vested in social relationship, which is conflicting. Power is the very determinant of social life, which is a complicated issue, cannot be understood merely through economic determination or from the control of the power or political instrument. Rather, it is a probability or chance of an actor or actors. So despite a social relationship, in a communal relationship, despite the resistance of others, it could be used. Though Weber considers power to be legal or illegal, that power could be legal, power could be illegal. But he says illegal power is basically transient in nature. And thus, it lies, since it is transient in nature, it lies outside the periphery of sociological analysis. And once illogical power is lying outside the sociological analysis, what is left is a logical power. And this legal power, not the illegal power. Illegal power which is lying outside, sorry, I've said illogical, it is illegal, legal. Illegal power is a transitory nature, lying outside the periphery of sociological analysis. So what is left? The legal power. This legal power is nothing but authority. And what is authority? Conceptual authority is the probability that a command with a specific content will be obeyed by a given group of people. Probability that a command with a specific content will be obeyed by a group of people. And when this command is valid, considered valid, it is legitimate. Now Weber is saying many of the actions actor performs are part of organization or institutional order. Thus actions, especially social actions involving social relationship, may be guided by the belief in the existence of legitimate order. Now Weber here is raising the concern that why do we obey the power? Why the person, individual obeys the power? And the prime concern in sociology, Weber in sociology, is the study of the social action, interpretative understanding of the social action. That why an actor considers something to be legitimate is related to the types of social action. And thus it could be traditional, it could be affectional, it could be what rational, it could be joie rational. So actor may consider something to be legitimate on the basis of tradition, on the basis of emotion, sanctity of value, or means to an end. Conceptually that would be traditional, affectional, what rational, and joie rational. But when Weber says that most of the actions are taking place in organizational or institutional kind of perspective, so when he moves towards the study of the organizations, he combines, mind the line, he combines the emotion and value into one. And combining this emotion and value into one, which will be charismatic. So he talks about the three types of authority. That is a traditional, charismatic, and legal rational. The sanctity of immemorial tradition and a belief based on the customs, traditions that justify and even sanctify the position of a ruler or a master, the leader. It is legitimate by individuals who in acquiescence in the system of rule has become customary. It is based on the claim made by the ruler or leader and on the part of the followers that there is a sanctity behind the old rules. It means the ruler, leader is not considered superior, rather becomes a personal master. And it is this personal loyalty that determines the relationship with the ruler. The obedience is commanded on the basis of the sanctity of rules, sanctity of customs, and the traditional status, which is usually inherited, which though always may not be the case. Weber considers patriarchy as the basic form of traditional authority, centered around a household clan, whereas the claim of legitimacy is based on the descent from some founding fathers in distant past or in connection to God or some divine power. The claim may be from male and female, but usually it is in the male line. It means now patriarchy is mainly a male power deriving from the basis of household authority, superior strength, practical knowledge or experiences. It is the power of man against women and children. It is the power of able-bodied against the lesser capable ones. Now when you say patriarchy, then you talked about, then I don't know whether you are aware of this fact, that matriarchy is a myth which has never been realized in the history of mankind, Weber says. Thus in the traditional authority, he will be talking about the patriarchal one, and with which the emergence of the patrimonial state. And when you talk about the charismatic, it is also personal, based on the timely quality of individual ruler or leader. By virtue of it, he is considered to be extraordinary. Charisma literally is the grace of God. The compelling charm of the ruler or leader is important, which basically demands, which basically brings devotion in the followers. It may be due to the divinely conferred power, considered to be bestowed with superhuman or supernatural or exceptional qualities. But it is to be remembered that the leader is considered charismatic by the followers, where the followers recognize some sort of extraordinary miracles or deeds performed by, shown by the leader. Mind the line there. However, it is also to be remembered when you talk about the charismatic authority, when the charisma has been bestowed by the followers to the leader, then the leader may not possess the qualities as described by the followers. But followers believe in him. They express some sort of emotionally founded hope or content of change. So at the time of crisis, charismatic leadership is revolutionary. And which can challenge both the traditional and the legal rational authority. It can bring change in both the traditional and the legal rational one. But the moment the followers believe that the leader has been dejected, deprived of these miracles, these extraordinary powers, or it fails to benefit them, the support may be withdrawn. This is the most transient form. Weber also talks about the charismatic movement and routinization of charisma. Routinization of charisma is either at the time of leader or after his death, when the followers turn his ideas into dogma to lead a normal life. It is a routinization of charisma, which with the passage of time may become traditional. And the third authority is a legal rational one, which could be found in most of the modern corporations, organizations that emphasize rational, purposeful action. Joak rational we are talking about. And is completely antithetical to charismatic authority, both in the characteristics, that is exercise of power, and also in administration of power. The authority of the individual is derived from the fact that they are official with the clearly defined rules and duties, who uphold the responsibilities of implementing these rules impersonally. It is based on the sanctity of formal rules or laws and the legitimacy of legally appointed leader or superior. It differs from the previous two types. They can issue a command and make it obeyed because of the legal framework that support their dominance. It is illegal because of the set of impersonal rules or laws. And it is rational in the sense that it is consciously constituted for the attainment of particular goal or a specific mean. On the basis of these abstract rules, personnels being subjected to laws, obedience being consistent to membership, obeying the person in authority, not the person per se, Weber is now highlighting the pure type, ideal type we are talking about. Though he is also aware that it may not be found empirically. The purest form of this domination is found in the formal organization, that is bureaucracy, which is, and Weber is also approaching that in terms of an ideal type. The functioning of modern state, modern economy received a new paradigm shift due to bureaucracy. Weber is delineating certain lines that which usually operate through the institution of bureaucracy. So ideal type reflect following features. I am talking about certain features. Personals are personally free and subjected to obedience with regard to impersonal duties to the office. Weber has taken much time there. Personnel are organized into a strict hierarchy of official positions. Each position has its own well-defined sphere of competence, hierarchy. An official holds the office by virtue of contract, that is in principle in accordance with free selection or the basis of personal qualification, demonstrated through rational action by a test or a confirmation of a diploma. Fifth, an official is compensated with fixed remuneration in accordance with hierarchical responsibility or prestige associated with that position. Office to the holder is only the main occupation. Seventh one, it is the career before him and with a system of promotion on the basis of time of service, performance or both. The official cannot own the means of administration and cannot appropriate their positions. And the ninth one, officials are subjected to strict and systematic discipline and control while carrying out their duties. These are the certain structural features which may not be found empirically. Bureaucracy is in modern times is legally constructed. But let me talk about the two dimensions more. The more Weber says, the more the bureaucracy is dehumanized. More completely it succeeds from eliminating from official business love, hatred and all other purely emotional and personal elements that many a times escape rational calculation. It could be used in terms of EI, fourth paper. Post-Weberian perspective will be there. To have a control on the world of commodity and administration. It has been created by man. So its responsibility must be taken by man. Weber is making the distinction between ethics of conviction and ethics of responsibility. However, this increasing rationality which has separated West from the rest of the world, this rationality has turned into a monster, has turned into a case. So you will be getting the questions on rational iron case. It threatening to dehumanize its own creator. On the basis of this increasing rationality, it has created, or man has created, the world of commodity and administration. And thus, it should be the man who should take the responsibility, not the God. It has turned into the rational iron cage that has trapped its own creator, has dehumanized him. Yet the creator believes to have achieved the highest rate of development. The world of modern rationality has turned into a monster, threatening to dehumanize its own creator. This question, a rational iron case of Weber, you can pick up from there. Peter Blau, Scott and others, through which we will be talking about the informal form of bureaucracy. And in terms of the unit 6, when the formal informal organization comes out, the best example of formal organizations would be the bureaucracy. Talk about the Weber from there. So that way you talk about the legitimacy, place the power, authority. And then once we have done this one, then you also talk about the bureaucracy, certain elements which I have talked about, the 9 elements, and that way the perspective would be there. I'll take some time. One part from where the questions are coming, sociology of religion, Protestant ethics and the spirit of capitalism. And when I say elementary forms of religious life of Durkheim is considered to be one of the major work in the sociology of religion, Weberian Protestant ethics and the spirit of capitalism are also an important treatise. And Weber is also known for his sociology of religion, in which the perspective on the comparative religion would also be found. Christianity, Confucianism, Hinduism, Judaism, Buddhism, Islam. They are the 6 great religions which he compared. However, we need to remember that he initiated his work on Islam but could not complete it. Weber throughout his life has struggled to know that why a modern capitalism emerged in Europe, or that Europe in which the capitalism which took shape, there also took place the religious movements. Is there any link between these two? Weber attributes increasing rationality of the West. That why modern capitalism has taken place. He is talking about in terms of increasing rationality of the West. In this context, you basically need to talk about the Protestant ethics and spirit of capitalism. That how the specific and peculiar rationality tied to economic and technical conditions and methods of production had originally been motivated by religious values. So these kind of questions are coming to you. Calvinism would also be talked about. This is the first ideal type in terms of Protestant ethics. But this part of the Protestant ethics is also the criticism of Marxian capitalism. And here we will be talking about that when we talk about, then we talk about economic determinism of Marx. Religion is a part of the superstructure. But when you talk about the Weber, when you are talking about the relationship, analyzing the relationship between the two variables, for example, economy and religion, you should not presume one to be independent, one to be dependent. Rather provide that, that's why I said Weber has basically freed sociology from any kind of determinism. The fixation kind of things is gone. So when you are looking at the relationship, analyzing the relationship between religion and economy, this is 4. Then do not presume which one is independent, which independent. Rather provide this elasticity. That if economy influences religion, economy is also subjected to be influenced by religion. And in this very perspective, Weber is moving away from the Marxian analysis. That is, infrastructure, suprastructure perspective. Weber also does not, this question coming out of in terms of capitalism, Weber and Marx. Weber also does not agree that the idea of capitalism is a unique historical development, what Marx has talked about. I quote Weber, there is no such thing as capitalism, there has always been capitalisms. The moment I say there has always been capitalisms, then ideal type would be coming out. That method has to be brought by you. Obviously, look at the concept, time and again I am saying, it is all conceptual. Once the concepts are there, you know what to write. There is no such thing as capitalism, there has always been capitalism. It also implies that every capitalist perspective present peculiarities that are not encountered in other type or other forms. Thus, the bourgeois capitalism of the West that has developed the types, forms and directions have never existed anywhere else. And therefore, the formulation of ideal type in analysis of capitalism has to be done. Weber says the capitalist does not limit his appetite in gain in accordance with customs and traditions. Rather, he is driven by the desire to keep accumulating more, so the desire of production becomes unlimited. Thus, what constitutes capitalism is not the idea of Marxian profit, but the idea of unlimited accumulation. Moreover, the prime concern of Weber has been that why capitalism emerged in the West? Why capitalism emerged in the West? That cannot simply be answered by the Marxian perspective. Since merely talking about the accumulation of capital and emergence of free class of workers would not provide the adequate explanation. Marxian analysis of capitalism also not making you understand that why in history specific individuals acted in a capitalist manner. Why in his history specific individuals acted in a capitalist manner? This could be answered, this could be understood in a Weberian perspective, for which Western as a method will be coming out. Thus, the meaning attributed by the actor in their specific action in the accumulation of capital would become important. Weber is now picking up the connectivity between Protestant ethics and the spirit of capitalism, which he approves, which he approaches with the formation of the ideal types. You might be aware of the first ideal type is the Protestant ethics, and where Weber is basically relationship between the occupation and denominational affiliations. Weber is now able to demonstrate that capitalist entrepreneurs are disproportionately Protestant. He also tried to analyze the close relationship between occupation and denominational affiliations, not only in Europe but also in USA, between the membership in Puritans, Mennonites, Methodists and other sects and their successful business activities, for which Weber is now turning to the interpretation of a meaning of lifestyle of these sects. Protestants are genuinely religious, but many ways, Weber says, are profoundly unworldly. However, to anticipate consequences of their concept of duties and vocations has led them to adopt to a lifestyle which uniquely suited to the capitalist mode of production in early stages. Martin Luther, John Calvin, by going against Catholicism, emphasize that human institutions would not displace an individual's personal relationship with the God. They also became critical of prevalent corruption in church and also disputed the claim that the hierarchy of pope, bishops and priests would act as intermediary between humans and a God for salvations in the next world. So, in this context, Weber's first ideal type is a Protestant ethics influenced by Calvin's doctrine of faith. Usme, you need to talk about theory of predestination. All right. The theory of finding signs. Those who embraced Protestants, in which we are saying about that God has created this world, the beautiful world. You have to make it more beautiful. The people who believe in the God, the theory of predestination, that long before your birth, God has predestined your salvation, that who will be getting salvation, who will be damned, is not known to them. Which has led to the psychological uncertainty. I am going in a brief now. And this psychological uncertainty led to the inner loneliness in the believers who had to work towards their faith by adopting an ascetic life or attitude towards life. And this ascetic life is denial of the physical luxuries. The people should look for the signs which could indicate that they may be among the chosen one. Thus, by indulging in a hard and laborious life, the believers could at least believe that they may be the chosen one. The second type, capitalism, is basically revolves around the teachings of Benjamin Franklin, Richard Dexter and George Bunyan. Weber says that they have basically advocated asceticism, hard work and adoption of methodical lifestyle. Weber particularly picks up Benjamin Franklin's advice to young tradesmen and the poor Richard's almanac, and the sudden injunctions that those who want success in trade, they need to remember that time is money, credit is money, money can beget more money. The most trifling act affects man's credit, and the sound of hammer at 5 in the morning or 8 in the night, heard by the creditor, makes him easy 6 months longer, etc. For Franklin, life was dominated by making money as the ultimate purpose of life, though combined with the strict avoidance of every or all spontaneous enjoyment of life. The ideal type, these two ideal types are altogether different from one another. The Protestant ethics is based on what rational action? The spirit of capitalism, the capitalism which you are talking about, the second ideal type, which is based on the Joack rational action. So in a Protestant one, the what rational one, attempt is basically to live up to the value of being saved and find the sign of salvation. And in a capitalist action, which is a Joack rational action, attempting to find a effective means to an end, that is accumulation of capital. They are different from one another, but combinedly, Weber says, combinedly they are Brock. That is called the feudal spirit. And that feudal spirit is basically irrational use of money, irrational spending of money, leading to or due to the luxurious life. And once this irrational use of capital is gone, then the rational calculus of capital became important. It means in order for the capitalist to rise above the luxurious life, it was required to give way to accumulation of capital, in which Protestant ethics played an important role. But once capitalism got institutionalized, it no longer required what rational action. Rather, Joack rational action became prominent. But however, to explain this transition, causal explanation was required for the first capitalist to begin acting in ascetic life, in which Protestant ethics became significant. Will of God was supreme, God is omnipotent, such kind of lines which you might have gone through. And what was lacking when he talked about that he compared the 6 great religions? Instead, his work on Islam could not complete it. Then he is talking about in terms of the refinement of Hindu civilization. He is talking about China. And there he is comparing in terms of this one and finding that how it has these religions have basically failed to produce such kind of this predestination signs. Such kind of predispositions were there in all the religions, but they have basically failed to motivate such kind of people who could go for the rational calculus of capital. Hinduism might have gone through the karma, Maya, all right, life or life after death. And in this very perspective, he says that all religions have basically failed to produce such kind of individuals who could go for the rational calculus of capital. It means what separates West from the East or from the rest of the world is the increasing rationality. And in this very perspective, you just first pick up the analysis of religion, in which you will also be getting it. Look at the question, you do not have to go so deep. Same Protestant ethics of capitalism would be making him move away from Marxian capitalism, so that comparative question comes out. Whatever I have said, just go through that one. How the religious ideas have motivated the change, you can look at in Protestant ethics. And if the Protestant ethics and spirit of capitalism comes out, you basically try to talk about in terms of the first Protestant ethics, the first ideal type and the second ideal type. Combine them, combinedly they have broken the feudal spirit, within which the luxurious life was gone, irrational use of money was gone, rational calculus of capital became possible. And from there, you talk about the Protestant ethics and spirit of capitalism. And I said that when you are looking at Weberian evolution today in a contemporary perspective, Weber is liked more. But not forgetting the kind of universal determinism what Durkheim has left in methodology is still a challenge before us. So almost every micro-sociologist will be talking about, in terms of symbolic individualism, we talk about phenomenology, you talk about others. Weberian contribution could be looked at. So if such kind of evolution comes out, talk about. And when a questions on bureaucracy comes out, don't forget that these are Weber is basically talking about a pure type and ideal type. And in this very perspective, things have to be looked on. And once we have done the Weber, it has taken much time, 2 hours at least. So I'll be talking about Parsons, yet another important thinker from where the questions are coming out. But before I begin, I'll take 2 minutes break and I will begin that. And once we have done the Weber, the two scholars, they will be there in a sync in our analysis. Would be Talcott Parsons and a Martin. Of late, the questions from the Parsons have increased. The same perspective here. And let me say to you that in a brief we will be talking about this. In a brief, we are talking about all the scholars. You can take the number of mine from the office and you can also contact me, but do give me the reference if I have not picked up. It means I would be in the class. So you just drop the message so that I could reach you. Similar kind of things which you have made in a Weber. Same things through which you try to approach Parsons as well. I don't know, out of all these 6 scholars which are there, the kind of abstraction which you are looking at in terms of theory, you will find that in a Talcott Parsons. And similar to that of a Marx Deer, in the sense that you begin from anywhere in the Marx, all the concepts, all the themes which are there in syllabus will come. And similar is the perspective in a Parsonian kind of perspective, Parsonian sociology. Let me begin with one of the statement of his student, that those who are looking for the entertainment or certain kind of lightness, they are advised hereby not to look to the Parsons. So somewhere the certain level of abstraction would always be coming in a Parsonian theory. But let me say one thing, that a new methodological theoretical stand at the time of Parsons which was going on, and more precisely within the American sociology, the kind of empiricism which was basically being emphasized, Parsons initiates a new tradition, Parsons initiates a new direction. From abstract theorizing to the empiricism. Not from the empiricism to the theorizing, what has been practiced at the time. Parsons says that when you approach society, so the moment you approach society, you find about the plethora of theories. The moment you change the time and context, the theory is falsified. The theory shows its limitation. And right since we have been demanding sociology should be a science. And in this very perspective, when you are looking at the Parsons, that one of the theoretical concerns, methodological concerns in a Parsons is basically a search of a mega theory or a grand theory for which Parsons should be known. Parsons would also be synthesizing sociology, psychology and anthropology. He will be synthesizing the branches of social science so that through the formation of grand or mega theory, the things could be approached. Not the plethora of theories. Parsons, in his methodological concerns, also talks about the certain terminological exclusiveness, the sometimes in terms of AGIL, fiduciary system, the cultural system, social system, personality system, cybernetic hierarchy of control, such kind of the terminological exclusiveness which comes in a Parsons would be understood only by the practitioners of the subject. Every science has a terminological exclusiveness. It should be there in sociology as well. And he will synthesize the previous traditions of explanation in which you might have gone through utilitarianism, positivism and idealism. And then the Parsonian social action would be emerging out. So look at the methodological concerns And then you look at the themes which are there in the theory of social action. 1937 he has written the structure of social action. Then you talk about the theory of social system. So 1951 social system has comes out, that book. And you will be finding about that how the question is there, that how Parsons moves away from the previous stand. So there the same question has to be understood and it has to be conceptually remembered of that one. When Parsons begins the structure of social action, his theory of social action, he begins with a voluntaristic action. I'll be talking about this one. Then you talk about the concept of AGIL, the functional prerequisites, adaptation, goal attainment, integration, latency, or pattern maintenance and tension management. All right. In this very theory or the concept of AGIL, you will finding about the question on cybernetic hierarchy of control and steering media. It is the universal typology of action. AGIL is a functional imperative or functional prerequisite. And the last one will be the concept of pattern variable. I just said that when you are looking at the mid of the 20th century, approaching mid of the 20th century, one of the important sociological contribution would be by Talcott Parsons, the American scholar, who has initiated the formulation of a grand or a mega theory. And thus, in this grand or mega theory, he is basically attempted to integrate all branches of social science into an overreaching, integrated theoretical framework. And with this, Parsons initiates a new theoretical methodological discourse in the sociological tradition. It is an aim to refine, to enlarge the sociological knowledge. Parsonian social action or social system. Social system which is basically based on the social action, we'll be talking. We'll be giving that in brief. Is basically emerged as an analytical theoretical framework rather than as an empirical reference. That's why I say that when you're looking at the American sociology, which was basically empirism to the analytical theoretical framework, from empiricism to theory, Parsons is now beginning, because this is the way, the practice which have been there. That's why sociology is in this condition. That's why the plethora of theories are there. The moment you pick up one, change the context, change the time, the theory gone. It shows its limitation. What we need to do? We need to pick from them. We need to add something to them. And that way, the formulation of a grand or mega theory will emerge out. It means Parsons is more concerned of analytical theoretical framework rather than empiricism. However, do remember that in this attempt he will be accused of being an incurable sociologist. But it is not only so. Either in terms of the study of AGIL or in terms of pattern variable, empirical analysis of Parsons could also be witnessed from where the questions have come out. Very simply, Parsonian contribution, Parsonian sociology could best be approached from the perspective of social action, social system and functional imperative. Parsonian social action is a voluntaristic action of two or more actors and within this one we will also be finding about that when he talking about the shift from social action to social system. From the voluntaristic action, rational choice action, he will be moving toward the structural functionalism. When you look at the book preface, you will find about one line in the book, a structure of social action. Now who reads the Spencer? Implying none. It also means when Parsons began his analysis in a social action, he was nowhere near functionalism. But he would be trapped to link the actions of two or more actors And in this very perspective, he will be moving towards the structural functionalist analysis. In a social action of Parsons, there is a synthesization of the three traditions: utilitarian, Alfred Marshall, the positivist, Emile Durkheim, idealist, Weber. It means the Parsonian social action is basically looking at the four works: Alfred Marshall, Wilfred de Pareto, Emile Durkheim, and Max Weber, on the basis of which the Parsonian social action has to be understood by us. Parsons' social system is basically a special type of social action in which there is a process of interaction between two or more actors. There is an independent and in part concerted action which results into the collective goal orientation. And the Parsonian social action is also talking about the situation towards which the actors are oriented. It means very simply, social system consists of the social action. And when say social system is consisting of, so it is consisting of interaction between actors. Each actor is a goal seeker. And thus in the process of interaction, every actor is an object of orientation for the others as well. It's not merely an actor, object of orientation for the others as well. Actors would be confronted, or actors are confronted with a variety of situational constraints. These situational constraints are not controlled by the actor, which includes ecological as well societal constraints. And the actor's action is oriented towards the situation in both, or which is both motivational and orientational, value orientational. Motivational supplies energy. It is an act to get something. It is through which the actor tries to achieve something. And thus we are talking about, when you might have gone through that and talked about the motivational orientation, you will be talking about cognitive. Cathetic, which correspond to the sentiment, and evaluative. That how the actor perceives is cognitive. And a cathetic corresponds to the sentiment. And it also involves the possibility where the actor could perceive an actor with effective gratification or effective significance. What is pleasurable or painful? And then the evaluative. When you talk about the values, it supplies norms and the values perspective to the actor. It is the observance of social norms. However, the terms will differ. Here we talked about cathetic, cognitive, cathetic and evaluative. Here we are talking about cognitive standard, appreciative standard in terms of where they were talking about cathetic. Here the appreciative standard. And then evaluative or moral standard. ये 6 terms तुमको याद रखना है. And you also need to remember that Parsonian social action would also create not only the social system but other two systems, that is cultural system and personality system. Parsonian social action or social system would also be reflecting the three features: interdependence of parts, stability in the social system, and the change in the system, but despite change, stability is maintained. And when you talk about the problem of social order, you talk about the questions of concerns of the functional prerequisites in Parsons, AGI will emerge out. And how the value dichotomy when the actor is choosing something. This value dichotomy would be there in terms of the pattern variable, which is also called the polar dichotomy. Ascriptive versus achievement, particularism versus universalism, diffusionism versus specificity, effective versus effective neutrality, and self versus collective orientation. Now, do not forget that when you are talking about the Parsons, Parsons would occupy a different place in the sociological tradition. In the mid of the 20th century, and will emerge as one of the exponent of the social action school. If I could quote Margaret Wilson, then he says that Parson is a leader of social action school, what is gaining converts and probably commanding the largest majority of sociologists in the understanding of modern society, its processes and its structure. And in this very perspective, the Parsons would be known for proposing that mega or a grand theory. When Parsons is linking the social action with that of the social system, he will be finding about the impact of structural functionalism, which is also influenced by the works of A.R. Radcliffe Brown in terms of the social, the functional, structural functionalism. When he is focusing on that how the social institutions serve the needs, then in Parsonian sociology, AGIL would emerge out. That's why I'm saying whenever the questions are there on a functional prerequisite, then talk about AGIL. Let me say that when I say that when Parsons began his career in sociology, when he picks up the structure of social action, he was nowhere near functionalism, which I just talked about. But the moment in 1951, when he was trying to link, or when he was trying to analyze the social system, he was trapped. How to link the voluntaristic action of two or more actors? Thus, linking this voluntaristic action of two or more actors, Parsons moves towards the structural functionalism in which the impact of A.R. Radcliffe Brown will become important. And look at my word. When he moves towards the structural functionalism, Parsons would be accused of moving away from his previous stand. So there you talk about that how he picked up 1937 the voluntaristic action, and then he links it in terms of a structural functionalism. When he tries to link the voluntaristic action of two or more actors, then this is a shift in a Parsonian perspective. But sometimes I say this is also enlargement, a refinement of Parsonian theory. From social action, the structure of social action, to the social system in 1951. And Parsons is basically picking up the social action as voluntaristic action being internal in nature. When I say this line, it means there you can witness the impact of Max Weber. But Parsons will also become interested in knowing the models of social action in economic theories, which makes him tilt towards utilitarian tradition, in which the works of Alfred Marshall will become important. And that's why I said that broadly the Parsonian social action reflects the impact of Marshall's, Pareto, Durkheim and Weber. And by synthesizing them, their views, Parsons is basically initiating an attempt to search a grand or a mega theory in a sociological tradition, in a sociology of social action. This could also be said that how Parson is basically synthesizing utilitarianism, positivism and idealism. It means when we are talking about the Parsons, apart from the methodological concerns in terms of mega theory, search of mega theory, synthesizing the branches of social science, in abstract theoretical reference, terminological exclusiveness, then the beginning of Parsons in a sociological tradition is basically the publication of a structure of social action in 1937, in which all this impact of the four scholars from Marshall to the Weber will become important. The three traditions, utilitarianism, positivism and idealism, would become important. And by synthesizing this one, he will be coming with the mega theory of social action. It is a voluntaristic action in which actor as a goal seeker, selection among the alternative means, actor is confronted with the situational conditions that he does not control, actor is governed by the values, norms, ideas, and when he is governed by the values, norms, ideas, these values, norms and ideas not only dictate, not only influence the goals, but also the means to achieve it. So you can make this in terms of the, like this, if I rub it off, you might have gone through that in terms of actor, goal, normative order, that is norms, values, ideas and situational constraints. And there are alternative means. For example, if I say that actor is a working employee, is a working actor. The goal is BA honors. So the normative order would be normative of the norms, values, and this normative requirement would be that he must be BA pass. And situational constraint would be money or time. And there will be alternatives of the universities, the colleges, which offer the course according to his requirement. And now on the basis of this diagram, we can say that it is the most basic social process. It is the unit act of the social system involving succession of acts. And through this, theory could be formulated. And this very social action, when which Parsons is trying to look at a broader canvas, then the perspective, the theory on a social system would be coming out. I quote Parsons, that social system is consisting of plurality of individual actors interacting with one another in a situation which has at least a physical environmental aspect, and actors are motivated in terms of tendency to the optimization of gratification, and whose relation to this situation, including each actor, is defined and mediated in terms of a system of culturally structured shared symbols. Bari ho gaya. Same diagram. Plurality of factors, interaction between them, goal seeking, situational constraints. Alright. Situation is oriented towards motivation and value orientational, and it has an environmental aspect. You pick up such words and frame your perspective of social system. And once you talk about this one, Parsons is considering this as a necessary elements, indispensable in every kind of analysis. Parsons is linking the normative and the situational order. Now look at my hand. Thus, action, interaction, and institutionalization of interaction. Parsons is talking about the mode of orientation, type of action, and institutionalization of social system. All right. This institutionalization of interaction is nothing but the social system. Social action creates social system, and social system now guides the social action. So the actors, interaction between them, institutionalization of interaction, and this institutionalization of interaction is patterned. It is giving way to the social system. It means, now if I make look at this, you might have gone through there. Types of orientation. Remember types of orientation, motivational and value orientational. So in a motivational we talked about cognitive, cathetic, evaluative. In a value orientation we talked about the cognitive standard, appreciative standard, moral evaluative standard. So this is one. With this, types of action will come out. Expressive or consummatory, the moral one. Similar to that of the Weberian perspective, we'll be talking about the types of action in a Weberian perspective or in a Parsonian perspective. 3 types of action: instrumental action, which is a means to an end; expressive or consummatory, which is an end in itself. So joaquinational action is of Weber is similar to that of instrumental action. Expressive action of Parsons is similar to that of Weberian vocational action. And apart from the instrumental and expressive action, Parsons will be talking about the third type of action, that is moral action. You can now compare through this the Weber one. Every actor is a goal seeker, rational. So that way, the way the rational, non-rational kind of bifurcation has been done, classification of done in Weber, that way you pick up this one, you'll be talking about. There were the 4 types, I talked about the 3 types. And from here, interaction between actors. And this interaction between the actors have been institutionalization. Institutionalization of interaction. And from here, social system will emerge out. Simply itna yaad rakhna beta, that institutionalization of interaction is a social system, which has a normative order, which has a situational one, which has an ecological aspects. There is interaction between the plurality of actors. The permutation, mind the line, the permutation and combination of these types of orientation will give the types of action. For example, if the actor has chosen cognitive from the motivational one and given privacy to cognitive standard of value orientational one, the action would be instrumental one. If the actor has chosen the cathetic one from the motivational one and given primacy to the appreciative standard of the value orientational one, the action would be expressive. Alright? It means the permutation and combination between the types of orientation would give to the types of action. And as the types of action, so is the interaction between the actors. And with this, institutionalized interaction will take place, and then it will be giving way to the social system. It means that Parsons is beginning with the unit act. And this unit act is now being combined with the process of interaction. That how variously goal-oriented actors in terms of their configuration of motivation and value orientation entered the process of interaction. And thereby developing agreements and sustaining the pattern of interaction, institutionalized one. So this pattern of interaction becomes institutionalized. And such institutionalized pattern is conceptualized by Parsons as a social system, in which the normative configuration of status and role becomes key. And thus, in a Parsonian, the study of status, role, norms is a subject matter, in which the social action is the building block of the social system. ये diagram याद रखना है बेटा. You need to remember this diagram. Social action would also be creating two other types, the other two systems, that is the cultural system and personality system. Though these three systems are altogether different from one another, they are conceptually different from one another. But Parsons is conceptualizing the interpenetration between these three. In other words, the organization of a unique act into a social system requires a parallel conceptualization of values and motives, values and norms, the cultural system, and the motives. So, interaction, patterns of interaction, the conceptual parallelization of value, which is a cultural system, and the motives, that is personality system. It means in a Parsonian theory, action theory can be understood in sense that how institutionalized pattern of interaction, that is social system, is circumscribed by a complex of values, beliefs, norms and other ideas, that is the cultural system, and also by the configuration of motives and role playing skills, that is personality system. अब क्या करना बेटा, इसी चीज में लिंक कर देना है. Though Parsons would be accused of this one, that the way he has given the book length treatment to the social system, he has not done to the culture and personality system. So यहाँ पे cultural system, social system and personality system. Yeah. Ideas as a source. B. Idea as constraint. वे पर्सनालिटी कल्चरल सिस्टम क्या देगा? आइडियाज, वैल्यूज, नॉर्म्स यही तो देगा. एंड व्हाट सोशल सिस्टम वुड बी गिविंग? इट मीन्स हियर वी आर राइटिंग अबाउट दिस वन. Don't be in a hurry. We are now linking it. Interpenetration we are looking at. So here I said about in a cultural system and social system, idea as a source. Idea as constraint. And here when it linking the social system with the personality system, mechanism of socialization and mechanism of social control. And when I linking the cultural system with that of the personality system, it means it is internalization of value system into personality from cultural system. And once you have done this one, it could also be used in terms of equilibrium, that how the equilibrium would be maintained in persons. And AGIL could also be used in terms of equilibrium kind of perspective. Apart from these three, when Parsons is talking about, Parsons also adds one more system that is called biological system. Because in a social system there is always a physical environment. And with this, the physical environment, the Parsons will be bringing about the fourth system that is called the biological system. It means now we will be having the four: the cultural, social, personality and the biological system. And the interchanges will be taking place between them. So you look at the cultural system, look at the social system, the personality system and the biological system, having their own subsystem. For example, biological system would be having the adaptive subsystem, economy is the part. Personality system would be going, I am talking AGIL. Personality system would be having goal attainment subsystem, G, polity. Social system would be integrative subsystem, so I. And cultural system would be latency or pattern maintenance or tension management, so fiduciary system will be coming out. And then Parsons will be talking about mechanism of socialization and social control. And with this, Parsons is basically talking about a person in theory is basically moving towards homeostasis, tendency to stable equilibrium. यहाँ से equilibrium वाला question, reflecting the regulation and maintenance of stability. He writes that all systems tend to approximate the concept of equilibrium, which is a fundamental reference point for analyzing the process by which the system either comes in terms of exigencies imposed by the changing environment, but also or without essential change in the structure. So change in the system. Thus, in a Parsonian theory, society could be viewed in a natural state, being balanced and stable. Society naturally moves toward the state of homeostasis, maintaining equilibrium. And once you have done it, then the social system and social action with the building block, we come to the social system. We have done this all. Then social system has functional prerequisites. In which we will be talking about AGIL. It means in a Parsonian social system, concept of AGIL is the most crucial one, reflecting the functional imperative or functional prerequisite. AGIL is standing for adaptation, goal attainment, integration, latency or pattern maintenance and tension management. But let me add one line, that like every other theme of Parsons which you talked about in social action, that how social action is basically influenced by Alfred Marshall, Pareto, Durkheim and Weber. When you talk about the concept of AGIL, the concept of AGIL has basically taken from the two associates of Parsons, that is Seals and Bales. Edward Seals, R.E. Bales. Very simply, these Seals and Bales have been asked to observe the tendency in the regularity in the way a group works. Whenever the group is assigned a task, what is the tendency of regularity? And in this very perspective, they said that actually it follows the 4 stages: adaptation to the resources, physical environment, goal attainment, integration and latency. Parsons adopted and applied this one in a wider perspective, and that is the theory of social system, referring them as a universal typology of action or problem of functional imperative, functional prerequisite, and make a system survive in stable conditions. Adaptation is basically providing for disposable resources and facilities from external environment. Goal attainment is a coordination of goal, mobilization of motivation, organizing the efforts of actors. Integration is the mutual adjustment of the units for collectivity of the system as a whole. Today, the last minute, I think I have not become a bit fast. And latency is the maintenance of stability of the institutionalized culture, reflecting pattern maintenance and tension management. There we talked about the nest of Chinese box, that in every AGIL, you'll be finding about AGIL in all the systems. So there you talk about economy, polity, family, legal system, external, internal. ऐसा diagrams we talk about AGIL. So there you can also talk about, if the AGIL is been there, that in terms of economy, polity, the legal one, family, this will be external, internal, instrumental and expressive. ऐसा करके उतनी जरूरत नहीं है. Now once you have done this one, then this is, you find about that how this AGIL, I'll draw a diagram for you so that you can understand some of them. When the change, you will be finding about how the modern society will be talking about the structural differentiation. So there, we will be talking about this all. So here, all right. Latency or pattern maintenance and tension management function. Here it is the cultural system, social system, personality system, and biological or behavioral system. Right? From here, So here you talk about the 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. In adoption, you are talking about economy, power, societal community, and fiduciary system. FI. Now, in economy, the medium of exchange is money. In polity, medium of exchange is power. Here is influence, and here is value. Okay. And you also make here is a physical environment, which will provide energy, ultimate reality, which will provide information. The first current is dear going from A to L, and second current is coming from L to A. This is cybernetic hierarchy of control, a study of information. So that how via the adaptive system moving to the goal, integrative and latency. And then the reverse system is coming out. By the time the two currents are in sync with one another, system would be stable. In 10 may change may use, we will be using that in change. Any discrepancy between these two would lead to the change. So that we will be finding about that how Parsonian's theory of social change would be coming in terms of evolutionary functional kind of perspective. And this question of cybernetic hierarchy of control is this. But this was a half question. Every system has a medium of generalized symbol of exchange, that is a money, power, influence and values. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. 6 types of exchanges will be taking place, and that way you will be finding about it how the equilibrium would be maintained. And the moment you have done this one, then the concept of pattern variable would be emerging out. This is the one which you have talked about in terms of agile. And in the social system, we will also be talking about the pattern variable. That's why I say that whatever concepts you pick up in Parsons, every concept will be coming out. It is yet another conceptual category in a Parsonian sociology which links the social action with that of the social system. Parsons, which is focusing on the voluntaristic action, rational choice action, purposive orientation of the actor, who is going for the gratification of goal. But in doing so, the actor has also to negotiate with the certain conditions defined and regulated by the normative expectations. So he will have to mediate with his normative standards before he could go for the gratification. So Parsons is basically talking about exigencies, expectations that the actors are likely to face in their action as a goal seeker. With this now, Parsons is analyzing the pattern variable. Parsons is also analyzing enlarging the individual choice from the macro cultural perspective. Since the culture guides the individuals towards one or another set of values, when an actor has to make a choice and give primacy to one. So how the actor chooses one and gives primacy over the another in this value dichotomy is a pattern variable, which is linking the social action with that of the social system. Pattern variable could be a kind of Ferdinand Tönnies, Gemeinschaft, Gesellschaft, or it could be a kind of ideal type of authority of Weber in terms of tradition versus modernity. And it could also be a kind of Ralph Linton's description of ascriptive versus achieved roles. It means Parsonian pattern variable is not only the analytical framework, but also the categories in which actors' choice between extremes can be identified. So ascription versus achievement, that is also called quality. Now we are using the word quality versus performance, effective versus effective neutrality, particularism versus universalism, specificity versus diffuseness or diffusionist, and then self-orientation versus collective orientation. 1 minute better. Let me say one thing. That whenever you pick up in a pattern variable any example, your example should be one. That for example, if I am talking about effective and effective neutrality, that mother loves the child most, but when she finds that the child is becoming indisciplined, to discipline him, sometimes she punishes it. Here the choice is between effectivity versus effective neutrality. Do not pick up the two examples to reflect effectivity with another example, effective neutrality with another example. No, give one example. Because this is the choice on the value dichotomy what the actor has to make in that situation. So give one example. Once you have done this one in terms of the mega theory, utilitarianism, positivism, idealism, through the social action, building block of social action would give the social system, the diagram which he made about. And when you have talked about the certain things which I said, AGIL when you made, this is the cybernetic hierarchy of control and the concept of steering media. This is the media, with which will also be used in terms of equilibrium, would also be used in terms of the change. And then when we talked about the pattern variable, in the beginning we said about that when Parson is moving from the abstract theory to the empiricism, he is being accused of being an incurable theorist. But I said that even despite this criticism, when Parsons is being accused of incurable theorist, he has also initiated certain kind of empirical work. For example, in terms of AGIL, Parsons has basically used the survey of members of American colleges and universities to understand the nature of the higher education. That very higher education reflects the functional prerequisite of AGIL within itself. AGIL, so ऐसा diagram आपने बनाया होगा. AGIL, here is AGIL, system, subsystems. Alright. And in the functional prerequisite of AGIL, so he says that in American universities, the structure of higher education can be described as specializing in implementing the cultural pattern of cognitive rationality. That is a scientific approach to generate knowledge for search of truth. So the whole range of teaching, learning in American higher education is basically based on the formulation of cognitive rationality as a paramount value, for which the survey method has been used from the members of the American colleges and faculties of universities. And particularly when you come to the pattern variable, in a social system, we will be looking at social structure and dynamic process. In the case of modern medical practices, Parsons is basically talking about the change in pattern variable also reflect change in the system. So he will be comparing that one, the tribal medicine man, with that of the modern doctors. Remember that one, the 5 pattern variable which you write. We will be talking about the simpler society, and the second parameters in opposite we are writing about, we will be talking about the modern society. Here Parsons has used the methods of participant observation and interview. So this pattern variable is also reflecting a change from traditional to modern, expressive to instrumental. It is a shift from Jesselsaft or Geminsaft to Jesselsaft. It is a paradigm shift in which the Parsons compared the traditional medicine man with that of the modern doctor. For example, if you say the role of modern doctor related with technical nature in terms of instrumental achieved status, who is affected to be effective neutral, he is a specialist of health and disease, to him every patient is equal, on whose treatment has to be done in terms of objective scientific mode in a universal pattern. Clear? It means pattern variable is basically reflecting a paradigm shift on the basis of, or the base of change, which could be understood, mind the line, this question was there, which could be understood from the perspective of cognitive cognizance. Alright. In a sync, that how this cognitive cognizance is coming out. Cognitive consonance is basically a state of mind in which the person's state of attitudes are congruent and in harmony with the system. हो सकता है शायद कॉग्निटिव डिसोनेंस का क्वेश्चन बन जाए, that in one you choose one value, another you choose another value. No. So this is a state of mind in which you find about a certain kind of congruence, and that way the paradigm shift and cognitive consonance, that question which has been there, that way you pick up. And one of the greatest critic of Parsons would be Martindale. So tomorrow when we will be talking about, I'll begin with the Parsons in a brief once again, and then we'll talk about the mutton and a meat. Thank you.